Hello, my warlock children. Today we are reading Melody in the Trees by Misty S. Wheelock. Standing in the shadows of the trees that concealed her, the woman ran her hand down over her dress. It was getting colder out as the seasons changed. She knew she'd be forced to stop this game soon. Her eyes were quickly drawn to a movement at her right. There, the one she waited for, the player in her little game. She smiled to herself. He always returned. He walked a few feet to stand under the same old willow, a place he frequented more and more as the summer waned. Slowly, as though to tempt the woman hiding in the trees, he pulled a beautifully carved instrument from the depths of his jacket and started to play. In the trees, the woman let out a sigh, how she hoped he'd play tonight. As the haunting music traveled through the air, she couldn't help but smirk as she parted her lips and added to the melody. The man paused for a split moment, and then resumed. Yes, the wonderful voice of the forest was once again singing with him. He closed his eyes, as though ready to let the music of the trees take him away. At the end of the song, he turned to his left, and the breath caught in his throat. Wow, was all he could muster. In the trees, the woman did not realize that she had been spotted. Her form glowed in the star-filled night. Her shadows had run from the trees. He slowly approached her. Hello. She nearly jumped out of her skin as he whispered the word in her ear. When had she closed her eyes? She turned them to him, and then he saw. Wow. Once again, all he could say. She had let him look upon her face. He had seen her eyes. The quiet gold of her eyes held much power, she knew. He should not have seen. Panicking, she fled the man and left the trees. As she ran away, he made a grab for her hand, determined to spin her back to see her eyes again. As she slipped away, he was left only with her bracelet. The perplexed man slowly walked home. Had the lady been the one singing in the trees the entire time? He never saw her there before, and he may never again. Every night for 3 months, he waited and played his haunting music by the willow. Every night, he was alone in the forest. And also every night he dreamt of those eyes he'd only seen for a moment. This night would be no different. As he put his instrument to his lips and began to play, a breeze came up from the south and brushed his face. For only the blink of an eye he thought he saw her again. Shaking it off as a figment, he played. He played one last time before returning to his life. He played for the lady of the forest. She listened, watched as he fell into his music. How she loved the concentration he put into every note. The way he tilted his head to lift the melody to the canopy. She made sure not to get as entranced with it as she used to. She stood farther in the trees. It would do no good for the clouds to reveal her once again. Slowly tears streaked down her face. She knew that he was not coming back. This was the last she'd hear of his passion, and despite herself, she lost herself to join his harmony. As her voice carried to his ears, he smiled. She was there, somewhere in the forest he had grown to love so much. They played their game, taunting each other with music until the sun was about to rise for the new day. Just when the last note was played, she walked into the waning moonlight. I love it when you play. I wish the sound of it would stay forever with me. Before he got to reply, or to offer her bracelet back, she walked past him and faded into the willow. A tree's spirit, he whispered, as the morning winds blew through the branches of the great tree. 1 year passed, and still he had yet to return to the forest or the willow. For some reason, as soon as he saw the lady of the forest walk into the great willow tree, he wasn't able to go back. There seemed to be something sacred about the place. He was curious about how she managed to give herself a human appearance. He wanted to know more about the tree and its spirit. For the 1000th time, he looked down at his wrist. The bracelet that he'd pulled from her arm when they first met. He still had it. He vowed to never lose it, for it was all he had of her. He got up from his coffee table and walked out the door. He needed some fresh air. As he passed by his favorite music store, he stopped in his tracks. A sign was taped to the window. See Miss Samantha. Hear a tale to chill your soul. The legend of the willow and the woman. Eyes wide, he read and reread the paper. Was this the same willow? Was it the same woman? He went that night and listened to the story. He left disappointed. There was no way that it could be her. When he saw her, she was beautiful, yet they said that she was a demon. He was so mad that he did not even realize where he was going. Bumping into many passers-by and almost getting hit by a bus. He didn't care, he only had one goal. He walked up to the willow. Reaching out to touch the trunk of the large tree, he couldn't help but feel sad. There was no possible way. He couldn't believe it. He wouldn't. You've come back. The lady of the forest came to rest beside him. She drew her hand up and touched the bracelet. You kept it. It did not turn to wood. Confused by her statement, he forgot about the reason he sought her out. Wood? No, this is gold. It matches your eyes. She turned her back to him, hugging herself. "I would have to tell you, I am not fond of my eyes. They have led to horrible things." He shook his head. There was no way. "You mean the story of the willow and the woman is true?" It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. It was not a favorable response. "Yes, 150 years ago. A young woman came into the world, as all children do. A loving mother and a caring father rejoiced when they saw their baby girl. Though only for a moment. As they looked in on their child that night, they came in to see that she had finally opened her eyes. Eyes that were golden as honey. Her mother stepped back in fear. 'No, my baby! She has the eyes of a monster!' And she ran from the room, leaving her husband to look after the infant. Picking her up in his arms, a silent tear slid down his cheek. You have no idea what awaits you if others see those eyes." 10 years later. A little girl ran through the village she called home, a thin veil over her face. Her mother said that it was to protect her face from the sun. The villagers thought it was a rite of passage, and that the veil would only be removed the night of the child's eventual wedding. Neither were correct, but neither gave question either. She was a happy child, hair flowing behind her like water on the wind as she hurried to her father in the fields. "Father, I am here to help you," she exclaimed, beaming up at her hero. He chuckled and looked down at his little angel. "Honey, you know that you must help your mother. I can handle the fields. I'll be home shortly." She looked down at the ground, saddened at being turned away. "But, Father, Mother said that house was too small for us both to clean it. She said that if I came to help you, maybe you'd be home before I had to sleep tonight." He chuckled again and bent down to a small pile of tools at his feet. He took up a small hoe and handed it to his girl. "Just this once, we may get done very quickly. I want to tuck you in tonight." She squealed her glee and ran a few feet away, digging as children sow, and planting seeds too deep to grow. 12 years more. It was her wedding night. She was so happy. Her mother was softly crying as the young couple left the house, ready to make a family of their own. Tonight she could finally remove her veil. Her soon-to-be husband was a young man with a lot of potential. Her father had chosen well. A farm all his own and a very nice house. He could provide for her, she knew. As they entered the little home, he turned to her and requested to see her without her covering. She was excited as she ripped the little piece of fabric away from her head and turned away from him. "You'll have to catch me first." She started a little game of chase through the house, into the bedroom. She collapsed on the bed and hid her face in the pillow. He pounced on her, eliciting a giggle from his new bride. He slowly turned her around to see her face. She was breathtaking. She had her eyes closed and a small smile on her lips. He could only stare as she blushed. Then it happened. She opened her eyes and he saw them, the color of honey, bright as gold. He jumped back. "What are you?" he yelled, backing away. "Demon, how dare you disguise yourself as my wife?" Horrified, the young woman just looked on as her husband brandished a weapon at her and shooed her from their home. She ran back to her parents' house, determined to ask them why her husband had reacted like that to her. Nothing made any sense. She ran onto the house and found her mother. Collapsing into her arms, she sobbed and cried to her mother what had happened. "It's no fault of yours, my dear," her mother said. "I bore you with eyes like honey, and it is unheard of for a human to have such eyes. You must flee if he thinks you are not human. They will kill you if that is the case." She was rushed out of the house with nothing to live off. She ran to the nearest wood, small forest outside of town. There she spent a number of weeks in the cold of the world, foraging for food with almost no shelter. She made do with a rather young willow tree. The hanging vines and branches made for a good hideaway. She was lonely and terrified at what would become of her. She began to talk to the tree as though to a friend, telling it how thankful she was that it was so kind as to give her shelter, sharing with it the dreams she had as a child. "I used to wish to be an entertainer," she'd proudly proclaimed to the tree. "I wanted to travel all the land and sing all the songs that they could teach me. Then my father told me that I could make up my own words to sing." She would sing any old tune that filled her head to fill the silence of the forest. She would try to see if she could match the whistle of the wind as it touched the tops of the trees. Of course she never could, but she did manage to attract attention. The village could hear the melody of her voice, and they became fearful. They had heard that a demon had stolen one of their girls and had tried to take her husband. He was rewarded for running it out, but now they feared that the monster was trying to lure people out to become its dinner. "We have to hunt it, otherwise we will become its prey." Many village men thought the same, and so a party was made. They came one night to the willow and found the girl asleep under the branches. There was no warning. She felt it as arms encircled her body and held her fast. She tried to struggle, but to no avail. She glared at the men that had her. "What are you doing to me?" she screamed. They saw her eyes and yelled back at her profanities and accusations of murder, of being a monster. "No, I am no monster. I am Mia. You know me." "She was no monster, you devil." And with that they hanged her from the very tree that gave her shelter. No one ever knew what they did. No one, except her parents. The man sat at the base of the tree. He rubbed his head in thought as he pondered the story she told him. They are so different, and yet the legend seems to be true. Tell me, are you truly the Willow's spirit, or the spirit of that woman, Mia? He looked up at her, just in time to see her glance down, as though shamed. I am neither, for I am more. As spoken before, my eyes are very powerful. She walked a few feet to the left and pushed aside a few of the covering vines. There was a breathtaking sight behind the willow's branches. How did I not see this before? He breathed. It was almost impossible for him to have glanced over the horizon and not been blown away by what was there. There in the middle of the forest was a small river that cut through to the heart of the land. A small pond was visible behind the great tree, and in it there was a new world. He had never seen anything so grand, yet so small. The sky illuminated the water's edge and threw everything into a new spectrum. Gold and white columns of light shone from the ferns and other trees across the small watering hole. This is my home. I call it the Eternal River. She waved her hand to the small pond and to the great willow. You live in the glade? If you died, then how are you not a spirit? Confusion warred with the man's emotions. The stories he had heard, both from her and the old teller, fought for purchase in his mind, but he shooed them away. He cared little of the matter, only that he was with her at the moment. If she was a spirit or guardian, a fairy of the glade, or a simple woman, he wanted nothing more than to enjoy her company. She watched him view her home and read the pains of his face. The awe that was in his eyes was nothing to the questions that she saw. Her small, sad sigh brought his attention back to her. Mia, what are you? He stepped toward her and reached out his hand, dropping it when she slowly backed away from it. You know what? Never mind. I don't care what you are. He looked into her eyes and found the words he couldn't say before. I love you, no matter who or what you are. She stepped back, hand on her heart. She had not expected his feelings, and was momentarily at a loss for words. A smile lit up her golden eyes, and she reached out to him. I can tell you what I am, if you'd like, she said, caressing his cheek. He stood perfectly still, just watching as she came forward to whisper her secret into his ear. I am yours. The soft breath against his ear and the sudden jump of his heart made him turn to face her. He met a soft pair of lips, and his beautiful Mai's golden eyes. It all started when he came to the forest to play his instrument and heard the forest sing with him, the melody hidden in the shadow of the trees. So normally I like to have lots of information in the opening paragraph. I think this works for you. We get to see who, the woman. You get to see when, where I guess she's in the forest, she's in the trees. It's getting colder as the seasons change. We know it's fall going on to winter. We have some mystery wondering what this game of hers is. We get some nice opening paragraphs here. Legitimately adorable. Wow, was all he could muster. I love the picture of them going back and forth like this for whoever knows how long. And she goes and runs away. The man, having seen her eyes, very fairy tale-ish, Greek mythology-ish. Very nice. Telling us the golden eyes are important and special. Of course they are. Very nice. I think you got a good strong opening here. Every night you could clarify the timing of this here. I know after a couple readings you mean after the paragraphs we just saw, after their quote-unquote last meeting. Then for 3 months onward he goes. This almost reads on the first read-through as though you're saying they just have been meeting for 3 months and this is the end of that. Maybe that is what you're going for. Either way, please clarify this. What world is this taking place in? You have mentioned a music store, tape, and buses, and yet the rest of what you've given us doesn't really seem to jive with it being just 150 years ago in our modern world. So I do not really know how to picture the sort of world that we are in. He's got a coffee table, music store. Seems very our modern world-ish. and the surrounding language is kind of epic, high romantic fantasy-ish. Leaves me a bit confused. The part here where he is going that night, listening to the story, I think you would be well served to have a scene break here, right here, and to give us an additional line showing his doubt at what he has heard, it having clearly not lined up with what he's experienced. It's pretty clear that, yes, the story is about this woman, and so he should be inwardly conflicted more than he seems to be. He says, there's no way that could be her. In what way? Despite what I just said, please, maybe don't tell us right here what the story is. At least consider that. When he saw her, she was beautiful, yet they said that she was a demon. Consider leaving us in suspense until he meets up with her again and confronts her about it, and then have like a boom moment between them as you see, oh, yeah, this is what the stories that they've been telling about this woman are. Could she really be that person? And we're gonna go down. Eyes golden as honey. No, my baby, she has the eyes of a monster. This confuses me reading it, since I have seen people with golden eyes. If this is relatively real world, I would not expect people to think golden eyes are demonic so much as I might expect people to say, oh, this is a child blessed by angels or something like that, more than I would expect, oh, golden eyes, that's monstrous, that's demonic. If there is a particular reason this culture, this village would think of golden eyes as demonic, like a specific monster had golden eyes and this is associated with that, that would be more believable on a first read. The rite of passage thing. Firstly, I'm only gonna mention this because I'm highlighting it. This should be R-I-T-E of passage. Anyway, the rite of passage thing works if one of the parents comes from a different culture and they could claim, oh yes, this is a rite of passage in our culture. The girl's got to wear her veil her whole life. If they are natives of this village, then you can't just make up a thing and have nobody be suspicious of that. It's incredibly invasive in daily life. In a village of the sort you're describing, I would expect all the children would kind of be taken care of by various families at different points. There's the reason, there's the saying, takes a village to raise a child. I would imagine other children would be going and swimming, and she would just have to not to because she's got to be wearing her veil. This would be something very invasive in her life. So I would not imagine neither grave question either would actually hold up. I think you structurally would benefit from a scene here where someone does see her eyes, and something bad gets happened, and that bad thing needs to get covered up. And so the girl afterward sees the world differently now that she knows there is something weird about her eyes. I think you could get a lot of mileage out of fairy tale-izing some things. You got the moment of despair. It's her wedding night. You could maybe get some mileage out of, say, the mom going to a witch asking for a cure for her daughter's eyes, knowing that her daughter's husband is going to see them, think that she's a monster. And maybe the witch gives her a potion, says, this will turn her eyes, I don't know, blue. But only if, I don't know, the husband doesn't see her eyes until the morning after their wedding. And in fairy tale-y fashion, the daughter is told this, and her husband begs her 3 times to show him. She does on the 3rd time, and he freaks out and be's a bit of a jerk. And we go right to the, what are you, demon? How dare you disguise yourself as my wife? I don't know why he's Sean Connery. That's just who he is now. How is it that the townsfolk never drew the connection with the veil in her eyes? They now know that the girl has the golden eyes. Why is it that their reaction is, oh, a demon must have killed the girl and taken her place? And not, well, maybe this girl who now has the golden eyes, who has worn a veil her entire life, maybe she had golden eyes the whole time. Maybe, you could also change up that pretty terrible fairy tale suggestion I gave you. Say maybe the mother did the spell potion thing from the daughter's birth. She had eyes of a normal, quote unquote, color her whole life, and the warning that the eyes would turn golden again when she reached a certain birthday, unless she married before then. And then you have a ticking time bomb thing that, of course, fails, and she has to deal with the townsfolk being a bunch of jerks. As it is, it seems like the townfolk are dumb. Mostly because of that veil thing. And, well, both things. Believing that it's a rite of passage when they have no reason to, and then not making the connection that she had the golden eyes the whole time. Aside from that, I don't think I have much more big commentary on most of the content we see after this. I think it's a very cute beginning and end. A good job mirroring the opening and the ending picture. I do kind of feel like something's structurally missing from the end. I don't terribly know what. I feel like you could have had the same ending without the man having heard either side of the story. So I don't know that we have justification for him needing to hear it. Maybe you need to make him have a truly uncertain choice that carries some risk. Have him be actually seeming to give something up to, quote unquote, help her here. And of course they come together, they're both helped by it, but is that making any kind of sense? I don't know. Maybe just pay another round of attention to this ending part here, make it resonate a little bit more with the story that she told. So it doesn't terribly seem like, I guess it works. He's saying, I don't care if you are a demon or a tree or a woman, I still love you. The people of her village, they loved her until they arbitrarily decided she was a demon. I guess that works. In any event, thank you for submitting this. I would love to see more stuff from you. And for those of you who are watching, if you have any constructive and uplifting comments for Misty, please drop them right down below. And please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you'd like to see further analysis and critique of these short stories. And if you have something that you would like to see read and critiqued in this manner, the description will have a link to submission information. Thank you very much. Have a great day.